Hi there, Zelda here. I am coming to you with a week ahead tarot reading. I'm going to show you three different crystal skulls. You're going to pick the one that resonates most for you, and then I'm going to give you a 3-card reading. You can find the link or the timestamp for your skull that you choose in the description below. So before I show you the three different skulls, I just want to show you the three different decks that we're going to be using, which will also be listed in the description. The first deck is the Smoke, Ash, and Embers. It's a tarot deck from Three Trees Tarot, which is all of these decks are from small presses. The second deck is the Reclaim Oracle deck. And the third one is the Uncertain Oracle deck. You can find all of the names to those in the description. So without further ado, let's jump into showing you the piles. Pile number 1 is Ilona. Ilona is a fae carved from, is a star being skull, I guess. I don't usually give their descriptions, I guess. I kind of gave it away. But maybe you're already connecting to that energy if you're sensitive to that. Carved from Sirius Quartz by Leandro de Souza, a star being. So that's pile number 1 if you connect to Ilona. Pile number 2 is Elrich. Very hard to see in this. Oh, you can see a little better there. It's actually a Smoky Citrine with this inclusion and some Rutile. Also carved by Leandro de Souza. And then, so if you connect with Elrich, that's pile number 2. And then pile number 3 is this Lemurian skull named Regina, carved by Vanderlei Barreto. So that's pile number 3. Feel free at this point to skip ahead to the timestamp, or if you would like, I'm going to spend a moment just calling in guides and centering, and so you're welcome to stay with that or skip if that works best for you. Before I start doing readings, I just like to center. You can light some incense or a candle. I like to use some of my Aura Mist. This one is Golden Sphinx, so it connects us to Akashic Records, really good for tarot reading. Calling upon all guides, ancestors, spirit teams, and lineages who I am blessed to work with and serve as a channel for. I invite these beings to share their wisdom and express my gratitude. I also call upon the guides, ancestors, teams, and lineages of every single person watching this video, whenever they may be encountering it, to support them in utilizing their own intuition and sacred power of discernment in their own channel to know which messages are meant for them and which ones they can leave behind. Okay. Let's jump into pile number 1. So pile number 1, you chose Ilona. Ilona is a fae queen. One of the things that I realized right away when I worked with Ilona is that fae were enchanted with like the neo-pronouns fae fair, and has this very like linguistically playful energy. So the fae can be a little playful and spiralic in that way. So let's look at the cards. So the tarot card for pile number 1, this is the Star. The Reclaim Oracle is security. And the Uncertain Oracle is self-compassion. When I see this, I'm really called to this like sense of grounding into being kind to yourself as like a really sacred medicine. That having like gentleness with yourself during your healing process is a huge kind of like a path towards healing. Many of us are constantly in healing processes throughout our life. We heal one layer and then there's kind of like another layer to be healed right on top of that. The star in the tarot is very much a card of healing. It is a card of healing that takes time. I really love Lindsay Mack's interpretation of this card as like the Mary Poppins of the tarot deck. They talk about how it comes and the energy kind of like stays as long as it's necessary, which can sometimes feel like quite a long time, and then suddenly kind of transitions out, stays until it's needed, and leaves once it's gone. And this feels like this dragon is perched on this rock and is gazing up at the North Star, and there's like these kind of like canal of water, but also like a corridor of trees. And it feels like there is a long path and you can't quite see it, the destination, but you're guided by this star. And this North Star in this feels very much like how you engage your healing process and how you are in a relationship with yourself. With the security, I see this quality of like, this being is standing there with their arms up, like holding something. At least that's how I'm seeing it. But also, like, maybe not even holding it, maybe just like having their arms up like that. And the security of it is like, it feels very empowered. It feels like this person is not secure because they've got someone else protecting them. They're secure. Maybe they feel divinely protected, but also maybe they're secure in their kind of like stature and the space that they take up in the world. And this self-compassion feels like this centralized, also like I'm hearing like hard won, that like maybe you are having a sense, or maybe there's this quality of compassion that has been hard earned. Like maybe you haven't always felt compassionate towards yourself. And like with all things, take this or leave it. But it's just an offering to like maybe acknowledge how far you've come around your sense of self-compassion and security. When I say secure attachment to oneself, and also in that to the universe, I think of a way that we trust that we're going to meet our needs, and that we're going to be okay, and that we trust that the universe is maybe a, if not good place, a beneficial place, like place that is here to teach us, perhaps. Teaching and lessons in general do not need to be enjoyable to be valuable. They can be. They certainly can be, but they don't have to be. I do see, I'm really like that rock feels very much like rooted or anchored. I'm getting like your base is one of the things that's being addressed in this, coming back to the root. Some of the things that I'm curious about is like, how do you show yourself kindness? How do you show yourself love wherever you are at in your journey? Part of that is seeing this kind of like heart here is this like heart at the root. And I think of how in the kind of like standard 7 chakra system, the root chakra is associated with like stability and safety, and oftentimes like formative developmental childhood years, like very early, of feeling safe and feeling like your needs are met and feeling worthy of being in the world. And so that in terms of like self-compassion is like maybe there is even some healing that's taking place around that. Some rebuilding of a stable ground, or even acknowledging the ways in which you have already healed around that, even if there's still a long way to go. That's absolutely okay. It's fine to feel like you have leveled up almost in your healing process, but that you're not like beating the boss level. Like, that's fine, right? Or sometimes after the boss level, there's a whole nother like tier of levels. Excuse me if you don't play video games, that's like a totally lost reference probably. But that's just like the idea, right? Is like, it's not a failure for there to be another stage. That's actually how growing and developing works. Like, it makes me think of the world card, which is not like the card that we're on in this, the star, but is like, what happens in this kind of transition and healing process is we kind of spiral around and we encounter the next stage of that healing, the next like flowering or blossoming open. Let's tune in with Ilona and see what they have to share. So I'm feeling this quality of like actually like feeling my body moved, and sometimes that happens and I'm just feeling like my arms were being pulled across, and then I realized like this is kind of like the movement that they were offering is this self embrace, which makes so much sense with self compassion. And if you're watching this, I actually get curious around like, do you want to try that? What does it feel like to actually give yourself an embrace? To feel the pressure of your own embrace on your body. They also said that beings from other dimensions and other realms, including your ancestors, loved ones who have passed, um, have compassion for you. They're not um, constantly thinking, like, why are they doing a better job? Or why haven't they learned their lesson yet? Like, this is a sense of like being in this timeline of like not quite having seen everything unfold, that like your impatience is your own, that that's not something that your teams are experiencing. And so she's saying like they have compassion for you, so why don't you have some for yourself? Like, why don't you let them show you how to have that compassion for you? They said, spend some time reflecting on how far you've come. So I'm seeing some sort of like journaling or um, they're showing me like petals or like leaves of something stacked. Um, I don't know if that lands. Like I was thinking of that as like a list or a tier of something, but if that resonates with you in any sort of way, that's what the image that was shared was. Okay. Thank you, group one. I think that that is your message for the week ahead. I hope that it is supportive for you. I look forward to seeing you next week. I missed you all last week when I was unable to make it to record this. If you'd like to be notified about that, you can subscribe and it'll let you know. Okay, group two, welcome. You chose Elrich. Elrich is an elf. He's one of the first elf beings that I have worked with. There are not that many others, actually, that I've connected to. So let's see. The tarot card for your week is the Nine of Wands. The Reclaim Oracle card is Closure. And Pathways. The immediate sense of all of these together is this curiosity around what evaluation process maybe you are in, around what tasks, relationships, duties regarding your passion, your creativity, or your work are you ready to lay to rest so that you can open up new pathways, new ways forward? This Nine of Wands, like especially this one in general, like I see this kind of like wounded paw, so to speak, and like a little bit of exhaustion. And he's like, honestly, this dragon looks kind of singed, right? Like there's some flames, and there's this one last wand. And this is very kind of symbolic of the like or the symbolism echoes from the Smith Rider Waite tarot of kind of having this like one wand left to complete, and it's a 9, so it's like close to the end of this cycle of 10, but there's this kind of exhaustion or fatigue setting in. And this is a time where actually like it can feel easy to see how much there is left to do instead of acknowledging how much there has been done. But also like I get curious around like sometimes we keep doing things in the way that it's been done just because it's how it's always been done, right? And how can you kind of like allow yourself to close the door to certain things that aren't working? Like I see that, right? Like this being is like, okay, bye, like I'm leaving, and all we have to do is actually like close the door in our belly so that our energy doesn't like spill out there. Or it could even be like a part of ourself that maybe we are letting go of so that we can move forward. Yeah, that feels pretty aligned actually. What parts of self do we need to let go of so that we can have what we long for? or what we're calling into us. With the Nine of Wands, I get curious about like, what does it look like to let go of a need to be busy in order to feel a life that is like abundant and easeful? Sometimes this looks like letting go of certain ideas or beliefs, right? Like we could think of like limiting beliefs. With this pathway, I'm also feeling like there's many paths to the center. There's many ways to get where you are going. And so we don't need to be overly preoccupied about like missing one, right? We miss one exit. It's like there's actually always another. It's like I'm hearing the like GPS, like rerouting or re-navigating or something, recalculating, I think is what the one that I used said. And, if it adds a detour on, then this is a lesson, right? You're not, I get this quality of like, you can like hop from place to place to get where you're going. If you are going from here to here, you could go hop that way or this way, right? There's many ways to kind of like circumnavigate or to find your way. To find your way home is what I'm hearing. Elrich is very quiet this week. I mean, it's obviously he chose these cards. One of the things that he is very skilled at is understanding how to call things into your life. In a way that is like pretty synergistic and immediate. This is something he said is like a strength of elves. They're really good at like things like manifestation because they don't recognize like a lot of the obstacles between wanting and having something. But he said that creates its own issues too. Like the things aren't perfect. Like that creates its own issues too. However, there's one aspect of like providing closure and kind of what I named around or what we named around letting something go to allow something else to take place is that a lot of calling something in is actually making the space for that thing to arrive. And so I think about these, methods of manifestation that involve like imagining yourself already experiencing that thing, worthy of that thing. And of course, this doesn't acknowledge systems of oppression and privilege, but it also it's not intended to blame someone for that not being possible based on their location. It's to acknowledge that if we were able to hold that for ourselves, that would actually be a disruptive notion. That's what he said. So like actually holding the ideals of believing that you are worthy and calling something into being is a disruptive notion to the system as it is. And that it is not to negate systems of power and privilege, but actually to disrupt them, that this is an important practice. And that it's never intended to blame oneself. It's actually intended to provide oneself the ground that is already there. Okay. Thank you, Elric. Thank you, Group 2. I hope that this was supportive for you in your week ahead. I missed you all last week. I look forward to seeing you next week. And until then, I wish you well. Okay, group 3, welcome. You chose Regina. See what your cards are. Okay. Your tarot card is the Ace of Wands. Your Embrace Oracle card is Fear. And your Uncertain Oracle card is Home. Regina is a colobus. Before I knew what that was, I called her the horned wolf. If you look up images of colobus, they're kind of like very scary looking, honestly. But she is not very scary. She's kind of like a large, almost spirit wolf with like big antlers. And the reason I'm telling you this is because it feels very relevant to this card of fear. Is that her initial message to me when I asked her about this was that it is really a survival instinct to fear things that we do not understand. That when we're in a state of survival orientedness, we will see things and think that that's scary because I don't understand it or I don't know what that is. And that this is a notion that keeps us from feeling at home in our experience. One of the things she showed me was that when deer, and she maybe showed me this as a metaphor, right? In the same way that guides show me a chrysalis, but this is a process that you could look up for deer, right? It's not a new notion that I'm presenting. Deer have, when their antlers grow and they fall off each season. And this is true for colobus as well. And when they grow, they have this velvet around it that is like a membrane or a vessel full of like blood vessels that provide nutrients. And then when it sheds, it kind of pops and it's kind of a bloody experience. It's like a shedding of the velvet, and sometimes they rub their antlers on trees to kind of get it off. And it's more like a snake shedding its skin. It doesn't tend, unless there's something wrong, it doesn't tend to be a painful process. But it is a very gory looking process. If you're not triggered by blood, you may want to look it up. It's very fascinating. But she showed me this kind of process and thought, like, doesn't that look gruesome, right? If you don't know what's going on, or if you are afraid instead of being curious. And so this feels very much like a contraction that comes, and the invitation is to open with curiosity. And when I see this, one of the things that, like, the phrases that came to mind is, what is like the full spectrum of home to you? And like the full color spectrum, but like the full spectrum of like, what does it mean to be at home in your body? What does it mean to be at home in your space, in your physical space? What does it mean to feel at home in your relationships? What does it mean to feel at home in a sense of your sense of calling and purpose in the world? How do you make a home in your creative process? And home is a place where we get to sometimes feel comfortable, but it also is a place where we oftentimes do some of our processing, our work, our healing process is at home sometimes. And having disruptions in the home can be a very fear oriented process, or having fear infiltrate the home can mean that there's no place to regulate, there's no place to feel safe. I hear Regina saying, like, don't let fear make a home in your heart, in your body. And if it has, there is going to be a spark that illuminates some of what needs to be done. So the Ace of Wands is a spark, which is to say a seed or an inspiration, like an inspirational moment. And that doesn't mean that the whole fire is lit and tended and going on its way. This feels like getting inspired to do something. And it's possible that that could blossom into something really beautiful and magical. And it's possible that that spark can be dampened if you are afraid of what happens if the fire gets itself going, right? It's very difficult for us to have to start a campfire if we are afraid of fire, right? The same spark could light a fire, like a campfire that lights a forest fire. And so I see in this kind of like ask to reacquaint yourself and make yourself at home in your own experience. And one of the things that feels key about fear and the Ace of Wands is it feels like that maybe there's some fear of, well, one of these is what happens if I fail. That was the first one I heard. And then the second is what happens if I succeed. What then? Right? I'm hearing, who will I be without this fear? Right? And that's sometimes fear, we make a home in being afraid. That's a place where we hang out and we get comfortable. I'm seeing like a lot of flashing that's a little too quick. I'm seeing like crests, like family crests almost. I'm hearing like an inheritance of fear. I'm like hearing almost like a clashing or something. So I'm like wondering about like conflict, unnecessary conflict that has arisen from fear. But the inheritance of fear feels like intergenerational trauma. You know, when I see home and fear, I like wonder about like what fear did you inherit from your home, like from your place of origin, from your lineage, and how are you maybe having a spark of inspiration of how to like transmute and transform that for yourself. I'm also hearing Regina saying more people could see us before they were afraid. And so it is true that fear keeps us from being present with our guides sometimes. Um, and so opening and releasing some of fear can help us to embrace and be more present with the supports and the inspiration that is all around us, offering itself to us, asking to work with us. What practices help you to be brave? Um, Yeah, I think that that is your message. The last thing that's kind of like nudging its nose in from her is that like having a sense of importance and not urgency as in there's not enough time, but like it's important and it will make a big difference to release this fear and find a place of courage that you can like radiate around you, like a sense of courage. Um, the opposite of fear is not fearlessness, but courage. Okay. Thank you, group three. I hope that you have a beautiful week ahead. I look forward to seeing you next week. And I look forward to seeing all of you, all three groups, and all of you who watch this channel. I really appreciate you all. Feel free to let me know in the comments what you thought and if there are any messages that resonated with you. Thanks so much. Bye.